Let me tell you about my city. It's wild gritty.
And welcome into the Change-Up on WOAY Sports. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at SportsWOAY. Matt Digby joined by Tom Beal. And welcome to the Change-Up, our good friend Rusty Udy from the Beckley Register-Herald. Of course, we have that partnership with the Register-Herald. Rusty, welcome to the Change-Up. Good to have you on.
Thanks a lot. It's good to be here.
Happy to see you, man.
Appreciate you asking me on.
Absolutely. So this is our 9th episode, but already it's week 3 of high school football. Can you imagine how quickly the season's gone by? We're already a fifth of the way through the regular season. Some teams definitely already making their cases for a playoff spot.
It's kind of hard to believe football just goes so fast. I mean, I guess it's kind of like you're looking to each Friday, and it does. It just zooms on past, and before you know it, we're going to have playoffs here. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and a lot of teams making their presence known in terms of the playoff picture. Tom, for example, you were at Woodrow Wilson, Greenbrier East, two teams definitely looking for a win last week to start their season, and Greenbrier East, what a come-from-behind effort they had after a fairly low-scoring game.
Yeah, I mean, it ended up being 28-23, so it didn't look that low-scoring, but it was actually a very defensive game. The first quarter, it was a 6-3 ball game, and that was off of a fumble return for a touchdown. There was also an interception early in that first quarter. A lot of defensive plays back and forth. Both teams doing a good job stepping up, controlling the line of scrimmage, and stopping the run. And, it basically just came down to who made more plays. And in the end, Greenbrier East had that one game-changing play, and they pulled out the W.
Yeah, they really did. And Rusty, you were at Shady Spring, Nicholas County last week. The Grizzlies getting a big win over the Tigers. They're out to a 2-0 start, and that's something we'll talk about later on in this segment. Great performance for the Grizzlies. Great 2 performances, first against Greenbrier West and then Shady Spring.
Yeah, Nicholas County is very strong. I mean, they've got some really solid players. I mean, everybody knows about Tate Mays, and everybody knows about Carter Servant Sweeney. I mean, he's a big-time playmaker, made big-time plays in that game. But, they go much deeper than just those 2 athletes. I mean, they have a very good offensive, defensive line, extremely good on defense. And, I talked to the coach after the game, and I said, Coach, you've got some kids that just like to hit people. And he kind of grinned, and he's like, we do kind of hang our hat on the defensive side of the ball. So, those kids at Nicholas County they'll stand up and fight with you.
Yeah, so Nicholas County off to a 2-0 start, one of several teams off to that undefeated start. How important is it, do you see specifically this year, because of the whole rearrangement in classification, a lot of teams going down to AA, a lot of teams now in Class Single A, only 29 last I counted in Class AAA. So how important is that 2-0 start, especially for those in the classes where you have more teams?
Well, I talked to Coach Mustaine last night at James Monroe because they have that big game coming up with Independence. And I think he said it well in the fact that, he said it's kind of a cliche, but in football, you need to try to win. You need every game. You need to win them all, because unlike other sports, like baseball, basketball, pretty much everybody's in the postseason. Just by your seeding may be different, but in football, you have to get in by your wins. And that's what he was saying is, this week's game was so important in the fact of playoff points going down the road. So, I think that's kind of the key is it's just important to pick up wins every single week when you can. And, it's kind of cliche, but, it's the truth.
It really is. And for the teams that already have had their bye week, you're talking about Oak Hill, they had week 1 off. James Monroe had week 2 off. Summers County had week 2 off after an impressive opening season win against Pikeview. How important do you view having the bye week, getting it out of the way, and then you can focus on however many games you have left in the season?
Every coach I've talked to, when I talked to Summers County, talked to Coach Mustaine, they're torn. They don't really know. It's like it's good in a way and it's bad in a way. Because now you're going to be looking at basically 9 straight weeks of football with no break down the road. With a bye week this early in the season. So, he said, Coach Mustaine said in the fact that they had a couple guys nicked up, and the fact that they would get better this week, that helped in that sense. But he said it was really a hard thing to answer. You can't really tell until down the road, how that's going to affect you. So, you just kind of take what the season gives you, and you have to make the best of it.
Yeah, I think it's right. You kind of, you're dealt the cards you're dealt, and you got to play them. But I mean, I think any coach would argue that it's more advantageous to have that bye as late in the season as you possibly can, because you might have a couple guys nicked up weeks 1 and 2. By week 7, 8, 9, you've got a whole lot more guys that could use the rest, use the extra week off. So I think it's a very tough situation, but it is what it is. They make the schedules that way.
He did tell me that, kind of, jokingly a little bit, and I think he was kind of serious too, is, he said that sometimes it's better to have it the very last week of the season. He said a couple things, of course you got time to heal for the playoffs. You can kind of go scout people that you may want to play. And he said, and if you have a bad team, you can get the season over quicker. So, it was kind of a funny moment, but.
Yeah, well, one of those teams that does have Week 11 bye week, Midland Trail, right now. They're coming off a win last weekend over Greenbrier West. They'll be in our Northside Chevy game of the week. They're visiting Meadowbridge. That's going to be an interesting matchup because you have a Midland Trail team that's 1-1 against a Meadowbridge team that's 0-2. Those are the exact same records for the two teams last year. And Meadowbridge goes up to Heiko and wins very convincingly. That kind of really, I was talking with them earlier this week when I did my Game of the Week interviews with them, and they said that game really allowed them to turn the corner, get back on track, and keep that playoff streak alive.
And they need it this year, too.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a kind of a strange year for Meadowbridge this year, just like last year was. It started out very strange, and everybody was kind of, to the point of, well, maybe they're not going to have that typical Meadowbridge type season this year, and was starting to write them off, and then they made the big stunning win. And I think we're in the exact same situation right now. I mean, it's one of those games where not only is it kind of a county rivalry game, but both teams need this game. They need it bad, and it's going to be a hard-fought game, and it's going to be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, they really do. Taking a look at some of Meadowbridge's key players. I mean, no Shane Harless, he's graduated. Dylan Walker's graduated. Ryan Church, it's now been several years since he's graduated, but Chris Sims, he was taking the snaps at quarterback last year, and now he's kind of accepted that role as the tailback.
Right.
Do you see him in the same mold as a Shane Harless or a Ryan Church?
I know that's what they're kind of, featuring him as, but it's kind of hard to tell right now, because with the game against Van, he played well against Van, and actually played pretty well against Tug Valley, but that game was kind of a blowout, so it was, it's kind of hard to tell just how effective he is right now. But I know he's a very hard worker. He plays hard. He's a good athlete, so I think that he'll be the feature back all year, no doubt about it. I don't know if he can put up those same kind of numbers or not.
Yeah, what I saw, I was actually at that game against Tug Valley last week, and what I saw is, Chris Sims is a very talented player, but pretty much every time he got the ball, he was immediately bottled up by 2 or 3 guys right at the line of scrimmage. I think that Meadowbridge, they want to keep doing what they've been doing the last several years, which is, run heavy offense, really pound the football, and Chris Sims is a good running back. But I think they lost a lot of size on that offensive line, and it's been a challenge for them to, figure it out this year. How do they get that done? So I think they still need to figure out certain adjustments, maybe get more creative with their blocking schemes and try to free up some holes for Sims, because otherwise I think it's going to be tough going the rest of the way for them.
Yeah, all starts up front. There's no doubt about it. No matter how good your athletes are and how good of runners, passers they are, if they don't have the time or the holes, then just can't get it done.
Yeah, and then staying in Fayette County Single A, one team, again, off to a very good start was the Fayetteville Pirates, 2-0. They got wins over Clay County, an impressive one-handed catch, which we voted our Geno's top play of the week by Dalton Dempsey. And then Will Fenton, our reigning Seattle Tony Athlete of the Week after his performance against Valley. First off, let's talk about Valley before we get into Fayetteville, the emotions of them, because I was up in Smithers. They are very excited about that new stadium, but at the same time, you have an 0-2 record, and you have the uncertainty of what's going to happen to Valley. Is half the school going to be in Riverside in the near future? Half of them going to have to go to Midland Trail. So what's the setting right now from what you've seen of Valley so far?
It's just tough all around. I mean, it's come out with such high hopes and really kind of a boost, with the new field and everything, and then kind of take 2 tough losses right back to back, and and it's 2 losses that they really they struggled, and they struggled big time. So with the news of most likely the they will be breaking up the school and everything. There's always two ways that goes. Teams can kind of put it in the tank a little bit, or they can dig deep and make it a rallying cry. So hopefully that's what happens for Valley. I mean, I think their coach had a really good outlook on the season this year, when we talked to him. But it's been a tough 2 games for him, no doubt about it. But I don't know if I can really, if I was a Valley fan, if I would judge it based off the Fayetteville game, because Fayetteville's really good. Yeah. They are really solid. So it's more down what's going to go on from here forward. It's what I would look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting into Fayetteville again, the Pirates 2-0, just like they were last year. They opened the season 3-0 before a loss to Meadowbridge, kind of sent their season in the wrong direction. But they have a very winnable game, in my opinion, at least, coming up against Richwood, another team that's also struggled. Of course, the Lumberjacks have had a bunch of outside the field issues with them being one of the towns most affected by those June floods. But Fayetteville, when you have a guy like Will Fenton and a guy like Dalton Dempsey as the quarterback receiver combination, it's going to be very difficult to stop that.
You got that right. And really, I think I think this team was poised for that last year. And the injuries just kind of overtook a little bit. And plus they had, even at that point, they still had a lot of close games and a lot of tough games. And just didn't quite go their way. And it seems like really good teams with really good athletes learn from that and kind of kick it over the edge a little bit. And I think when I first saw this schedule set up this year, I look for Fayetteville to go kind of deep in the playoffs. I really do. I think they're going to be a really good team. David's doing a really good job over there, David Moneypenny. He's got the 2 great assistants, that's got 10 million wins behind the
Absolutely, yeah.
That never hurts. So, I think it's just a thing with single A football. If they can stay healthy, I think their chances of going deep are really good. I mean, no matter who you play, when you shut out both your opponents, that's impressive. In any level, that's impressive.
Now, Rusty, did you see Will's actual numbers from that game? Because they were something out of a video game.
I was going to say they were kind of. If you're an opponent, they were really gross.
More than half of his completions went for touchdowns. Exactly. He only played the first half. That's something you almost never see. But when I look at Fayetteville, I think that for the single A level, they're just set up to perform so well because they're like the only team that has that kind of drop back and just throw the ball type offense. Everyone else is very, very run heavy. And so these guys can put up a lot of points very, very quickly because they're not afraid to throw the ball downfield. Will can do that. Certainly he's shown off the arm a lot. He's got a great rapport with Dalton Dempsey, and they've got several other receivers. So even though they're a small team, I think they only have 23 or 24 kids in the entire program. I mean, they just have so much just kind of high-flying aerial talent in that offense. Exactly. It puts their ceiling.
Fun to watch.
It puts their ceiling at a much higher level than most of the other teams at single A, I think.
Yeah, I know when I talked to David, his concern is wanting to run the ball a little better.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like that if there is a concern about Fayetteville right now, it's that kind of balance situation.
Right.
Because as we know, even though we've had a couple good weeks of weather, it is Southern West Virginia, and the bad stuff's coming.
Yep.
So you're going to have to be able to run the football, and even when you can't throw it. So I think that is a little bit of a concern right now, but that's something that they're working on, and I would dare say they will get it solved.
And I think their defense has gone under the radar a little bit too.
Exactly. Because of the offense.
Exactly. The offense has been so good; it's been almost overlooked that they haven't given up any points yet.
Exactly.
I mean, they've been playing really well. So if they can keep that going, they're going to be a powerhouse in single A.
I think so. It's going to be a fun year in Fayetteville.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of great running performances, switching over now to AAA, Princeton's Zach Standifer. We named him our Athlete of the Week for Week 1 because he had such a great performance against Shady Spring. And Tom, you asked him.
Probably could have done it 2 weeks in a row, honestly.
You asked him, was he confident of being able to keep that up against Bluefield? Well, we found the answer to that question pretty quickly.
Yeah, I said, so there's no way you can keep running for 240 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I was right. He only ran for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, what he's done so far is outstanding. He's already almost at 500 yards for the season, 8 touchdowns. They're going up to Martinsburg this week. That should be, it's a long road trip. It's going to be a very tough game against one of the top teams in the state. So if he can maintain anything close to that level of performance against Martinsburg, he's definitely got to be one of the top contenders for Player of the Year. And so far, he's put that team on his back, and I think it's a good team. But you mentioned now, they've lost their quarterback for some period of time, so that's gonna be different. They're gonna have to adjust to that. I know that balance is one of the things they were trying to emphasize a lot more this season. So I mean, this will be a big challenge for them, definitely.
Yeah. After the Shady game, that was what Coach Shady really pointed to, is the fact that they were balanced. It's when people try to stack the line on Stanford that they can throw the ball, and they did a very good job against Shady. But losing him now it's definitely a blow, because they were really at a good point. They were balanced. They've 2 good wins to start the season, and you kind of wanted to be at full strength going to Martinsburg, because even at full strength, the proposition of going to Martinsburg is a tough deal, and it's going to be even tougher without Schaefer at quarterback. So, but I'm sure they'll bounce. They'll go play. They'll show up and give it an effort. So
now, do you have any experience seeing Martinsburg live as far as what type of team they are offensively?
No, I haven't seen them. Being kind of up in the Eastern Panhandle, it's kind of hard to see them very often, because usually it's either playing there or up in the northern part of the state. So I haven't seen them live, but they're legit, no doubt about it.
Well, it should be a fun one.
Well, Princeton definitely, like you mentioned, you were at the Shady Spring game in week 1, and that was a very interesting game, because when I arrived, I was at Woodrow Riverside to start that week, and then I went to Shady Spring. First play I get there, Shady Spring's already in the red zone. Keith Sexton scores that great touchdown run to put the Shady Spring Tigers up 14-6, and we're thinking, wow, great game. Shady Spring really is wanting to turn the corner, and then Princeton really just takes over from there. Zach Stanifer breaks off 2 touchdowns while I was there, and it was a great performance for him.
I think the size just pretty much took over in that game. Shady played well, and last week's game was so uncharacteristic of the way they've been playing, and they just kind of got themselves in a little bit of hole to start with, and they just played a little flat. I mean, they didn't play up to their potential, and I think after talking to Coach Colcerto after the game, he was disappointed in the way they played. He didn't like the effort, and I think it's one of those things that he'll probably address that throughout this whole week, and I look for a much better effort from them, but they're a good team. I mean, they really are. I mean, don't let the result at Nicholas County fool you. That Tyler Bragg can scoot. I mean, when he gets on the outside, and he did a couple times against Princeton, when he turned the corner, he turned it into touchdowns. Mm-hmm. And, like you say, Keith Sexton is an excellent athlete. They got a young kid at quarterback that comes in sometimes, Cantley.
Yeah, Joe Cantley.
Can really throw the ball. I mean, so, and Sawyers is a big target down the middle. So, Shady is a much better team than that result showed. So I look for them to do some good things this year.
So now they have Summers this week, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they are at Summers County. So a matchup of 2 teams that were in Class AAA and AA respectively last year. Now Shady Springs now in Class AA, Summers County Class Single A, and Summers going to be coming off the bye week.
Yeah. Yeah, Nate Grimmett, he had just one of those average games, of having your hands in 5 touchdowns and well over 300 yards of total offense. So, we'll see how it goes against Shady, because, they came out against Pikeview, and, Pikeview had high hopes. They were returning 17 starters. Looked like they were going to be pretty solid this year. It finished the year well last year, and Summers just took it to them, and a big part of that was, Nathan Grimmett and how he played. So, the teams got a little bit of film on them now. We'll see how teams make an adjustment to that, and of course how Summers will readjust. Once when they get back into action. But it was a definitely impressive first week, and quite honestly, it kind of surprised me a little bit.
Now, I haven't had a chance to see Summers yet in person. How do they seem to be adjusting to life after Matt Ryan?
Well, that's when you look at and when you look at Summers, it's and deservedly so. Matt got a lot of the attention because Matt's a great athlete. There's no doubt about it. But there was other players, that they lost in there. Josh Smith and some solid key components to that offense and defense. And so you kind of figured it's going to be hard to replace those. But week 1 they came out like gangbusters and they played really well. So I look for them to do pretty good, and especially. On the single A level, if they can get into the playoffs, they can make some noise because they're solid. They're a solid football team.
Yeah,
absolutely. Switching over now to Wyoming County, we had the big battle for the Golden Shovel this past weekend. West Side winning convincingly over Wyoming East. Second year for the Warriors under new head coach Don Jewell, and they admitted that when I spoke with them prior to 2015, they knew it was going to be a long season in store for them, and I think it seems to be the case again. You have another tough loss, granted to a very talented Mingo Central team, a state Final Four team in 2015.
Right.
So the schedule's never easy in Class AA because you have so much talent all around the state. But yeah, I just see it could be a tough season for Wyoming East. And granted, at the same time, for Westside, they're poised for another great season.
Mm-hmm. Well, when Westside started the season this year, and there was just a quiet confidence that they had down at Clear Fork, and I really expected them to do well. I was shocked at how well they did against Liberty the first week, because it's usually always a nip and tuck battle between those two teams, and there were some other circumstances for Liberty that kind of affected that game some. So, but Westside's been impressive. I mean, they really have, and I wasn't shocked at too much at the Mingo Central Wyoming East game. Mingo Central is very good, but I think that the folks at Wyoming East felt like the game was going to be a closer game than that. And until the quarterback went down, I think that may have been the case. And anytime you lose your quarterback, and it's been there for quite a few years, that makes a difference. And it's one of those deals where sometimes the injury and the schedule all add up into a little bit of misery, because they haven't played any chippies. I mean, they've started out with Mingo Central, went to Westside, or hosted Westside, and now they're getting ready to play. Well, actually, they went to Westside. I'm sorry, and they're getting ready to play Nicholas County. They're going to host them. So, that's some of that's just an addition. And that's I think it was when I was talking to Richwood's coach. That's everybody has high prospects for the season. He said sometimes it's who you play. It's like not that you have a bad team. It's sometimes it's who you play, that they're just really good, and that will cause you some trouble down the road a little bit. And I think that's some of the case for Wyoming East. Is right now they're just a little overmatched in some of the games they played. I don't think they're as bad as what the record or what the scores have shown so far. It's just they've played some really good football teams, and unfortunately, there's another one getting ready to come into New Richmond this weekend. So
yeah, like you said, I think every team comes in with that optimism that they're going to have a great season. And I covered Wyoming East in the preseason, and that was certainly the case there. I mean, they seemed like they really believed that they were a playoff caliber team, that they were going to bounce back this year. And a lot of that was on Hunter Hall. And unfortunately, now that he's hurt, that's a big blow for that team, because he was really expecting to have a big senior season. I know his brother was a freshman on the team. He was hoping to kind of establish a quarterback to receiver connection with him as well. So tough break for them. Two tough teams out of the gate, and unfortunately it doesn't go their way. And then as for Westside, I mean, Coach Darren Thomas returns after a hiatus, and they pick right back up where they left off, 44 points in that first week. They look just as good as they've looked in a while. So they're going to be a team to reckon with.
You lose big name stars, and everybody, it's like every year we seem to wonder, how are you going to replace these folks? How can it be that good again? And it's almost like it's that time for some people to shine. Nathan Grimm at Summers County, he comes out and says, okay, now it's my time. Josh Morgan, Westside, now it's my time. And that's what's great about high school athletics is, we know these kids, but sometimes we don't know their full potential until they get that shot, and then they step into the limelight and make a great performance. Yeah,
well, as we wrap up our high school segment here on the Change Up, where are you headed to this week?
I'm actually headed down to Meadow Bridge.
You're going down to Meadow Bridge? I'll be there too.
Meadow Bridge. Yeah. I sometimes think you stalk me, and I'm not sure. But
that's why he's asking you.
Exactly, yeah. But that's going to be a great matchup. I think Midland Trail, Meadow Bridge. I always love getting to go over there. It's a great atmosphere. And Tom, you'll be headed to Preston County. You'll get to see Greenbrier East again. Chance for the Spartans to see if they can keep this momentum.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to hopefully an offensive touchdown this time around. I didn't get to see one last week. I saw a defensive touchdown, but
it was an impressive one too.
See.
Yeah, Billy Honecker.
Yeah, no, Billy Honecker had a great, especially first half there, because he had that fumble recovery, and then the next series he actually picked off a ball and brought it deep into Woodrow Wilson territory. So he. One of the standouts on that Greenbrier defense.
Yeah, that was one of the guys that we were told to keep an eye on this year, and he's living up to the billing.
He's a great athlete, and he's performing well right now.
Yeah, he is. Well, that will wrap up our high school football segment here for the Change Up. We're going to take a quick break. Coming up next, David Miller will join the table here. Rusty, and I will discuss West Virginia's 26-11 win over Missouri, and we look ahead to Youngstown State as the Mountaineers have the 2016 season underway. This is the Change Up on WOAY Sports. welcome back to the Change-Up on WOAY Sports. Matt Dignity, joined by David Miller and our special guest, Rusty Udy, our good friend from the Beckley Register-Herald. All three of us were at the West Virginia-Missouri game to open the season this past weekend up in Morgantown. First off, it's finally here. The waiting is finally over.
I think that's one of the first things that Dana Holgorsen pointed to after the game is like, his first comments were, "Thank goodness that's over," because they were ready to play, and that's it. He's like, there's all that spring ball and summer practice and everything, all that anticipation, and we come out and get a win the first week of the season. Good job.
Yeah, and they were able to do so against the Missouri team that didn't quite have the best of seasons in 2015, but 2013 and 2014 they win the SEC East both of those years, and we were talking about it several times in the lead up to that game that, yeah, it's not Alabama or LSU, but we're also not talking about Kentucky or Vanderbilt, all due respect to the Wildcats and the Commodores. Missouri was a quality team, and to their credit, they came to play.
Well, the thing about Missouri is it's kind of lost in the results last year, but they had a lot of off-the-field stuff going on last year, the suspension of the quarterback and different things going on, so they had a lot of extracurricular things going on. They had a top 10 defense, and the fact that they returned the majority of that defense, they were too deep across the front lines. They got All-Americans at the defensive tackle positions. West Virginia was not playing just the Sisters of the Poor. That's a good team that they played, and to basically control that game like they did, that's a pretty impressive win.
And Coach Holgorsen actually brought up the linemen in the post-game conference. He said, when average is about 280 versus our offensive lineman about 240,
right.
It's all about leverage. But
exactly.
Rusty, the thing that stuck out to me is, I agree it was a great win. Maybe we overlooked Missouri a little bit, not giving the Mountaineers enough credit for that win. But once again, we're kind of seeing issues of not getting it into the red zone issues, not punching in for the touchdown, settling for that field goal. You hit these Big 12 teams that put up the points, field goals aren't going to cut it.
Yeah, he addressed that a little bit afterwards, which, every time he brings it up, he's like, oh boy, here we go again. But, you're right. I mean, that's an issue. It's been an issue. And unfortunately, for Coach Holgorsen in West Virginia, everybody's going to look at that. That's a sore spot that sticks out. So you're correct. I mean, getting in that many times and only getting one touchdown, is a big deal. He was pointing to the fact that, getting into the red zone and Missouri's defense being so good at the defensive line and everything, that really made it tough in order to score. I can go along with that, and I can understand that. But it's still hard to digest a little bit, considering the fact that West Virginia's had those issues going all along. So, it does leave a bit of doubt in your mind. It's like, is this the same thing all over again? Yeah. And, with the offensive line that West Virginia has right now, you definitely would have felt like, I believe it was 5 trips in the red zone to get one touchdown, that would have been at least 2 or 3 scores. And, the fact that they didn't punch the ball into the end zone actually left Missouri in the game. And outside of a key play there right before the halftime by the defense, could have been a totally different football game because of lack of scoring.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that lack of being able to punch it in, and that's kind of the misconception about Holgorsen's offense is he depends on the run. He doesn't depend on the pass. Yeah, we zip it downfield, but he depends on that run. If you're not punching it in, you're in big trouble.
That's exactly right. And, West Virginia's got to solve that issue, and we say that every single year. And it seems to keep popping its ugly head up.
Another thing that came up to me, and I think a lot of conversation is, do we think Howard's going to make it through the season? I definitely think he's going to end up missing a few quarters in the game, a crucial point. We saw Kress come in and the third string come in, and they absolutely
did not get the job done. Kress's very first play, he fumbled, gave Missouri the ball in the red zone. Granted, it led to a missed field goal, so the Mountaineers dodged a major bullet. But first off, from where you were up in the press box up in Morgantown, what was your view of that whole sequence of events? Howard, it looked like he kind of was running to the sideline, kind of held up a bit, tried to avoid the injury, but then it got to the point where you had to have the trainers come on and he had to leave the field for a play.
It was a clearly busted play. you know, and the fact that, you know, and Holgerson said he wouldn't rat out the person. It was a first-year guy, missed the play. And but the thing that was odd about it, they said it was a non-contact injury. I thought it was when he got hit, but he said it was a non-contact injury, and you know, it was to the point where he couldn't breathe. And you know, we've all watched enough football throughout the years, played enough sports and everything like that. One of the worst areas you can be hurt in is in the ribs area.
Yeah.
You know, it's always sore. It seems to never heal, and you're in a contact sport that really doesn't allow it to heal. And you know, they said nothing was really broken or anything like that, but when you're injured to the point of not being able to breathe, you know, that's a serious injury, and that's a serious area. And I agree with you. I totally think he's going to miss some games.
I mean, that's why I was going to ask you. So at the end of the day, it's pretty much a given that he's going to miss some time.
I think so, because it's, you know, when you get into the meat of the Big 12 schedule, you know, they're going to put some licks on him, and you know, unfortunately, the way football's played, when they know that's a problem, you're going to get maybe some questionable licks put on you. You know, they're definitely going to try to knock you down and see how tough you are. I mean, there's no question, you know, that, you know, he's the toughest, probably since maybe Hostetler, you know, that played at West Virginia, who, you know, he was under the same situation, but eventually he succumbed to those rib problems. You know, it's just an area that's just tough to play with, you know, with that injury in football.
You know, now that you bring it up, traditionally Mountaineers, especially, we could go back to Bulger back in what, 95?
Yeah, late 90s.
You know, we've always been missing that quarterback to take us over the edge. Pat White did get us there through his running ability, and we saw a little bit with Gino. Gino disappointed his last year, but you know, Bulger kept hitting his pinky on the center's helmet, breaking it, and then it seems like the quarterback's always injured. Is it death? We all thought Crest was going to be the next great thing, but he didn't turn out. Is it just death at that position that's killing the Mountaineers?
I think that has some to do with it, and which is odd, you know, in the fact that Holgerson's had such good, you know, results there with quarterbacks and stuff. So it is kind of odd, you know. But you know, the fact that when I was nervous in the summertime when, you know, Crest had not made himself the definitive number 2.
Right.
And after he's been in the system this long and been here this long, if he's not made himself the definitive number 2, then, you know, as a fan and as a sports writer, I somehow question, is he actually the quarterback that you want? Is he not better served somewhere else?
Right.
You know, and you know, if Chugs comes in and does a decent job, that's still up in the air, you know, because he looked very questionable at times too, you know. But you know, it's, if you're a Mountaineer fan, you've got to be a little nervous, because, you know, as much as you want to think Howard's going to be there all the time, I just can't see him making the whole season, even as tough as he is. And when he goes down, you know, you've got to have somebody to come in and step in, and we just don't have that depth that you're talking about.
For me, my thinking would be, we're loaded at receiver. So you don't take Crest and put him in the slot, because, like you said, you have to have that backup ready. There must be something there that keeps hanging on to that second spot, or we would see him in the slot. I do expect we'll see a trick play down the road somewhere with him, maybe something like that. But Matt, you can speak about it too. Just that quarterback position is really going to be our downfall. We thought defense might be, being so young. What do you think about the defense, guys?
Defense was great, but again, going back to what you were saying about Crest, I mean, you and I saw him in the spring game. He had a couple interceptions in that game as well.
Very shaky.
He did not look confident. Chris Chugunov kind of did okay in the spring game, but you know, we saw how he performed against Missouri. It's almost as if I can imagine some Mountaineer fans just hoping and dreaming that the NCAA passes a crazy ruling that would allow Will Greer to be eligible for the rest of the season, because that's kind of almost where it's getting to, where if Howard leaves, Greer would be an okay explanation, but we have to wait until 2017 to see that in person.
I don't know if we're that far yet. I don't think we're begging for Will Greer to come in. I think there's still a lot of excitement about Howard, but like you know, the little inside look that maybe we had the advantage of, you know, I'm sure the fans are a little bit nervous watching him go off the field, but you know, Howard can make it through. He is tough, like you said.
Very tough.
The ribs, you know, it's not that season-ending type of injury, but I don't think Greer's on the radar yet, but there is some doubt at that position now, and we're just getting started here. You know, we're one game in.
With a healthy Skylar Howard, it makes the running game click because they have to respect his throwing ability down the field, and now this new intermediate passing game that they seem to have really hung their hat on has done well. That keeps that running game open. But if you don't have that ability to throw it down the field a little bit, then they're going to shut that running game off. So they're going to put the pressure on the quarterback to throw it if it comes down to the backups.
Yeah. What do you think about the defense? I thought linebackers did a good job of containing the outside perimeters. Got a good rush from the defensive line. DBs played back a little bit, not as much man as I thought they'd play, but overall they look good.
I think they played really well. Even as with Missouri coming in and having some of the struggles they've had offensively, they got Josh Heupel now as the offensive coordinator there. So you expect it to be fast, which it was, and I expected a lot of screens, a little short passes, and then take some shots down the field and stuff, which they kind of did that. So, but the defense stepped up, and I thought the key moment to show just how well the defense played was when Crest did turn the ball over on the 6-yard line. It's a 13-3 game. West Virginia dominated that first half, and to have gone into that halftime at 13-10, I think would have been the kicker that would have put Missouri possibly over the edge and possibly won that game. So the huge stand, by the defense right there, which you would not expect that as young as those kids are, and so many first-time starters and different things like that. That was incredibly important in that game, and they came out with no points. And everybody, as soon as you get in that situation, everybody's like holding the field goal, and they held them to the kick. The kick was missed, and the game kind of flipped because then Howard does come back second half, has the big drive, and then Missouri kind of deflates after that.
Now, with that defense, I think the most impressive thing, like we said, Missouri's offense was with Heupel was trying bubble screens, a little bit of option, not much of an option, but they scrambling quarterback. But it came down to assignment football, and that's impressive when you got freshmen. They stuck with their assignment. Then bail on it and just do some crazy out of the wall play.
Yeah, I tell you what, and I'm a little bit of a home state homer when it comes to Tony Gibson, but that is an excellent defensive coach, excellent defensive mind. I like the way he does things, and I got to give him a lot of credit. Even as good a coach as I thought he was, if you would have told me they were basically holding Missouri to 3 points, I'd have laughed you out of the building. And that's what they did. That last score was kind of late garbage fourth quarter kind of stuff. And we kind of fell asleep a little bit, but boy, the ones were just tough on defense, really tough.
Yeah, that's what impressed me the most. I mean, I was talking to Gibson post game. He was giving this general coach speak for the most part about how we got to close those mistakes. But what impressed me the most was Missouri wasn't shy to go with that dual quarterback system. You had Drew Lock, who kind of seemed like the more standard pocket passer, but then you had Marvin Sanders, very talented, more mobile quarterback. And the Mountaineers were not fooled by that. We've seen how many times any team going up against two quarterbacks that get roughly equal playing time, and they just run roughshod over the opponent. That didn't happen for WVU's defense here.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't want to get too overly, enamored with the defense, because they are still young and still a work in progress. But that's the kind of start that you wanted, and they look very good. If they can play solid against Youngstown State this week, they're going to get a true test against BYU because they throw it and run it. So it's going to be tough.
Let's look ahead a little bit. What do you expect out of Youngstown State? Coach from Nebraska, Coach Pelini.
Bo Pelini, yep.
And any surprises there? Just a good, solid football game?
Yeah, I think so. He's kind of you're going to see a lot of two tight end sets. They're going to run the ball a lot. They ran for, I think, close to 400 yards against Duquesne, which, Duquesne's not a Division I program, but still it's a good, when you put those kind of numbers up, that's impressive. And so I think you're going to see a lot of that. Clearly they want to control the clock. They want to keep West Virginia off the field, keep the ball in their hands as much as possible. And honestly, I think you'll see a lot of, if people remember back to the Connecticut days when West Virginia played them, that's the way Connecticut would stymie West Virginia, is they would, just kind of dink it down the field, just move, get first downs, move the chains, and keep that high-powered offense off the field. And it frustrated West Virginia. And, the thing that will make you nervous as a West Virginia fan is if they are successful doing that, West Virginia has shown tendencies to get nervous on the offensive side and try to push, and they'll make mistakes. So we'll see if they have matured enough on the offensive side to do that, and if the defense can keep Youngstown State off the field.
I think another good example from previous years would be East Carolina. You saw Pat White go down in East Carolina and really struggled. Steve Slayton struggled, but you're exactly right. It's about ball control, and this might be the game. Pelini's going to bring in a strong defense.
Exactly.
They're going to come after him. It's going to be tough up on the front of the lines, and this might be the game that we see that.
He's put together a couple good defenses over his time.
Oh yeah.
Just once or twice. Do you expect them to be fired up to the point where Pelini gets a sideline warning or maybe an ejection for on-field behavior? Or?
Well, I tell you, Bo is about one of the most unpredictable coaches that you'll ever come across. So you never know what he's going to do, and I can't imagine him not having an explosion somewhere along the way. Unless West Virginia would somehow jump out on him quick and get a big lead and the game kind of be over by halftime or something like that. But if it's a decent game and a tight game, oh yeah, I fully expect him to explode at some moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that game is a 2:00 kick. That's also going to be interesting too. It's not noon like we had with Missouri. I mean, any errors you saw in the offense and defense, you could kind of attribute to early start. This week, you don't have that excuse. You've had a couple more hours to wake up, get rested, have a good pregame meal, and
well, maybe the students can make it there by kickoff this
time.
I think so. I mean, because that was just very interesting to see. A lot of people still coming in for a season opener against a Power 5 team.
And that's just classic blue lot. Getting down. It's
odd, but I give them credit. They did show. I kind of wish they'd stay. It looks bad on the TV when we got that big gap up there, and after halftime or something like that. And I thought it was very strange because the game was very much in doubt at halftime. I mean, there was no doubt that Missouri could have come back and won that game. So
I think that goes back to the point of not punching it in the end zone. That game could have easily been a blowout, but like you said, it could have easily been a fourth quarter come down to the wire type game.
Exactly.
And credit to Mike Molina, who stepped in with Josh Lambert still suspended, the Hurricane native connecting on all 4 field goal attempts. But yeah, like you say, is it really necessary for him to have 4 field goals and only 2 touchdowns on offense? Granted, Russell Shell and Justin Crawford did very well.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if especially with Howard a little banged up and not wanting to run him as much as they have in the past, if we don't kind of do the a la Texas, and Swoops bringing him in to run it there inside the red zone. If they don't, we see some of that with
the
Crest.
big 18-wheeler package that Texas has, which really has Mountaineer fans scared right now, looking down the road.
I mean, we knew Oklahoma was going to be a big game, TCU, Baylor, but all 3 of those have to come here. WVU gets to go to Texas in November. That's going to be a fun game.
I tell you what they should do. They put Molina back there. Well, he's 5'5", maybe 5'6". Nobody'd even see him. Just scoot him through there.
They definitely have to get it figured out.
I mean, Slayton wasn't the biggest guy when he was in the Big East, but then again, I mean, Big East is not the Big 12, but still, he was.
I mean, Slayton was probably about 5'10".
The one thing that I really liked about Rich Rod when he was here, and the concept of that spread offense, a lot of times when you get down to the goal line, everybody bunches it in, and that makes everything such a congested mess in there. Rich Rod spread them out, and that's why it made it even easier for them to score in the red zone because, it's like Slayton and stuff. Once they get that crack, they bust through there. Yeah. And I tell you, we saw that with Crawford this weekend. When he has a crack, when he has a seam, he gets through there, and he really can bust a run. So, and he did well that one drive on scoring in the red zone. So, it might be some ideas and some things to look at. I just am not a big fan of Texas. I am a big fan of it because they've got those linemen that are 1,000 pounds that they can stick up there and push your way in. I mean, West Virginia's a great offensive line, but we don't have those big gigantic brutes that's just going to shove defensive tackles out of the way.
Yeah, I don't think we have the speed, obviously, with Howard versus years past. But like you said, when you get in the red zone, if you do spread them out, you don't see that initial quick slant or whatever the route is. That quarterback's going to take off. If he doesn't see those first couple of reads, he takes off.
Yep.
Howard's problem is, all right, he doesn't see it. He's thinking about, all right, now I'm going to take off, and he's still a step slower than what we need to be. And then, you're getting you might get 2 yards, but you're getting stuffed and pushed back.
Exactly.
And then the fans are at the point where they expect it now, and the boo birds come out early. They
really
have come out early.
That's true, yeah. Well, and even the coaches know that. I mean, it's not like we're telling them something new by any means, but that's just we know down the road that West Virginia is going to be some tough sledding. You know, you go against Texas or something like that, you can't kick field goals. You go against Oklahoma, you can't kick field goals.
Yeah.
You've got to get those points. So, you know, if they're going to get up to the top 3 or 4 in the Big 12, that red zone issue has got to be fixed.
And I think, going back, I think that's a great sign for us that we are kind of angry about, and we're nitpicking. You know, speaking as a fan now.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking as a fan, we're nitpicking these little things because the expectation is there that they can make a run.
Yeah, I agree.
We've seen Houston take down Oklahoma. We've seen a whole week full of surprises.
Mississippi State for starters. I mean, Texas, Notre Dame. I did not expect. I was hoping Texas would keep it close just as a college football fan in general, but I had no expectation of them to win that game, especially the way they did in double overtime.
You know, we talked last week, Matt and Tom and myself. I listened to Caridi interviewed a person from Vegas. I don't have the names with me, but Vegas predicted the Mountaineers either basically win 2 wins or win the whole shebang. Get 11 wins.
Goes everywhere.
There was no in between really with the Mountaineers. They were really, the schedule does set up for them this year. So again, going back to expectations, I think that the fans see all the aspects. They have all the right moves, and they want us to take that next step.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a situation too that I'm not sure the fan base. And I'm not sure the administration is going to be too settled on a 7-5 type season.
Oh, no.
I think it's going to have to be 8-4 better.
Yep.
Especially after Lyons has already given him the vote of confidence for 2016. He's not going to have that luxury if it's another 7-5 season going into the bowl season in December.
Which is disappointing because I agree 8 wins is the minimum for Holgerson this year, but he has another great recruiting class coming in. They've already signed up a bunch of recruits. Will Greer, you don't know what's going to happen health-wise, how he rebounds from his difficulties, but you know that's a Florida quarterback, 5-star quarterback that the Mountaineers, well, probably 4-star, but Mountaineers got in-house. You know, it's
and that totally changed Florida's team when he went out too.
You guys will talk some more college football when we come back?
Yeah,
or?
probably final thoughts. You'll be at the game in Morgantown on Saturday?
No, not this week.
Not this week.
I'll be back in Morgantown, the Kansas State game.
You'll be in the Kansas State game? Yeah, David and I will be at good old Bristol, Tennessee, the battle at Bristol, Virginia Tech and Tennessee. But one last thing on West Virginia before we go to break. Score prediction or still jury still out?
These are the kind of games that, you know, as you say, speaking as a fan, that drive you crazy because, you know, it's one of those games you feel like, you know, you should score 35 or 40 points against, but it just never seems to work out that way against teams like this. Those teams are better than people give them credit for. So, you know, I would think it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about, I'm thinking maybe 31-14, something like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking 38-14 for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, I'm probably closer to 31-14 with you, maybe even 31-21.
Yeah,
I think the issue is going to be is the crowd is not going to be as heavy, not as excited. Like you said, it'll be a 2 o'clock start. They'll be a little bit more rowdy, a little bit more intoxicated.
I think we're looking at some questionable weather too, and that always hurts the crowd. So.
And Youngstown is fairly close to Morgantown, so they're going to bring plenty of fans.
Missouri
more than
had
Missouri.
no fans there, so that, you know, the crowd might not be behind it. Enthusiasm might be a little bit low. It's one of those games that if you're working or something, all of a sudden the bottom line comes, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa. And then you're
Time to tune in.
Yeah.
Well, great predictions coming up for West Virginia, and we'll have more sports talk when we take a return from this quick break. This is The Change Up on WOAY Sports. Welcome back to The Change Up on WOAY Sports. Matt Digby, Rusty Udy from the Register-Herald. Tom Beal's back with us. Final thoughts, our bringing it home segment. Tom, big night for National Football Week. It's finally back.
It's finally here. I feel like we've been talking about it every episode. And this is the last realm of football that we have yet to see return. The NFL back tonight. We're going to open things up with that Broncos-Panthers game. Real exciting. A rematch from the Super Bowl. And so what I want to talk about tonight is the chance for Cam Newton to get his redemption. Obviously, the Super Bowl did not go his way, and he drew a lot of criticism for how he handled the post-Super Bowl press conference, as far as leaving in the middle and all that. And people kind of jumped to take one side or the other on that issue. But tonight, you can kind of put all that aside. This is a chance for him to really let his play speak for him and remind everyone why he was the MVP last year. I don't think he's going to put up the same kind of numbers this year that he did last year. 45 total touchdowns, it's equal to 15-1. Those are just things year to year, you're bound to see a little bit of regression. But I think this first week, the Broncos defense is going to be tough, but I think that Cam's in a really good spot, and I think he's motivated to prove people that what happened in the Super Bowl was a fluke. I think that early on in that game, actually, he had a couple of receivers drop balls. I think that made a big difference in how that game played out. This time around, it probably goes a little bit different for him. The Broncos offense, yeah, you can say Peyton Manning wasn't great last year, but what he did do for them, even when he wasn't able to throw the ball well, was he has that ability to run an offense and call out protection schemes and really make the run game run a lot smoother. And now they have Trevor Siemian, who's never thrown an NFL pass, stepping into the mix. So he has good receivers, good running back in C.J. Anderson, but I don't think that offense is where it needs to be yet. So I think the Panthers take this rematch in probably a somewhat low-scoring game.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. We'll see how Siemian does when the actual lights come on.
Yeah.
It's one thing for preseason and things like that, but you always hear coaches talk about that when the actual game lights come on. Some people are like deer in the headlights and others respond. So we'll see how that goes. And I think it's an important game for Cam because I've always been a Panthers fan since they started because I lived in Charlotte at that time. But I think with Cam, as much as he's a great talent and as much as he's a great athlete, I sometimes I question how he handles adversity a little bit. It seems to kind of deflate him some, and the great athletes, the great winners always thrive on that adversity and make themselves better. And I think that's what Cam really needs to do if he's going to be in that elite status all the time.
No, I agree with that. And I think the Super Bowl was, he's had a couple of seasons his first few years where things didn't go so well and you saw him get kind of down. But I think that Super Bowl was the first time he's really dealt with that level of adversity. And I think that's why you saw him handle the press conference the way he did, was because he just wasn't equipped to handle that. I mean, you saw he just completely shut down after that game.
Sure did.
And I think that he's still young enough where it's going to be a learning experience for him. And I think that he does have a lot of positive mentors in his life and people that are, going to help him kind of overcome that obstacle. And so hopefully this offseason has been a chance for him to kind of refocus his mindset on just playing good football. And now that he's been through a challenge like that, next time around, I think it'll
handle it much better.
I think it'll work out a little better for him.
Yeah, I think the Panthers are going to be really good this year. I think this game's kind of key for them. If they can win this game, I think it's one of those deals where they could go along to being a pretty good season this year. But if they take another loss, especially if it's a rough game for Cam, doesn't play well, it seems like the loser of the Super Bowl always has that tough year the following year. So we'll see how that and I think tonight's going to kind of dictate the flow a little bit, as to where they're going to end up.
And what the biggest knock on them last year was that they didn't play anyone big in the regular season. They won 15-1, but a bunch of cupcake games. Yeah, we expect them to win the NFC South. It's not a very good division, but if they can win a game like this, it'll help not only obviously their physical record and their confidence, but the perception of them as one of the top teams in the NFL. I think it'll go a long way to helping that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, well, what I'm looking forward to seeing in that game specifically is Trevor Siemian. I had a chance to see him several years ago back when he was at Northwestern, and they were playing Ohio State and a lot of the big teams of the Big Ten. The big thing in that situation, though, was at Northwestern, he was kind of a complementary quarterback to Kane Coulter. They had that two-quarterback system that worked so effective at some times. Now it's going to be just him under the spotlight. No Peyton Manning, no Brock Osweiler, because he's now with the Texans. So now I'm very interested to see how Siemian handles the pressure being the number one guy. But Rusty, what's one of the big sports topics you've been following the past few weeks?
I guess, the one thing that's kind of caught my eye, especially just recently, is Tiger coming back. That's always an interesting proposition. I think that, it's kind of spoiled some people of late a little bit in the fact of, I'm coming back. I wasn't really quite ready, and I came back. So hopefully this time it's the real deal. He's ready to play. But, back issues are iffy proposition, and especially in golf, they're iffy proposition. So we'll see. I think unfortunately, whether people like him, whether people hate him, he's good for golf. He brings a lot of people to the game, and bottom line, he's the one that has brought the fans, the casual fans, which has actually increased the purses, increased the viewership. So, he has a lot of responsibility there in where golf stands right now. So I think it'd be real fun if he could come back and be competitive.
Yeah.
Because that's everybody wants to see him kind of battle it out with, Rory and guys like that, Jordan Spieth. And, it'll be fun to watch, if he can do it. But, I got to admit, is one thing about getting older in life, getting over stuff is not as easy as it was when you're 25. So
how do you think he's going to have to adjust his game? Because certainly you'd expect coming off a back injury, he won't be able to drive it like he used to, and that was always the thing that carried him through. And there's other things
I think that's
perfect.
a good point, because that's always the one thing that Tiger kind of had that somewhat mental advantage on people with that. And as you get older, you just really don't hit it as far, and that's what he's going to have to bank on more, is his own game. Not look at the perception of the guys around him who's probably going to be hitting by him now. You've got to get the ball in play and get yourself on the green regulation and put pressure on people that way, which he can do. He's pulled off shots in his career that I've sat and shook my head and watched it 2 or 3 times like, I don't know how you did that. So he's got the capability.
Well, from what I've heard, you're describing the Matt Digby golf playbook. So maybe you should take some tips from Matt.
Absolutely,
on how to come back and recultivate his game.
Well,
Exactly.
he probably has hit some shots that people scratch their head on, but probably not in the same light that Tiger has.
No, absolutely, yeah. He will have a great opportunity to see some of those players when he's the assistant captain later this month in the Ryder Cup over at Hazeltine. But do you see him winning another major? Do you see him contending seriously for 18 and tying Jack?
I don't know. Right now, golf is very deep in the players that they have. I mean, the thing about players right now, and Rory seemed to have had that more than anybody, was Tiger had that killer instinct that, that he just went out and just stomped on you and then beat you that way. And Rory has that a little bit. But a lot of the guys out there now don't seem to have that kind of killer instinct. So, I think it's definitely, possible. I don't know. It's just hard to. I've got to really see something better out of them than what I've seen, in the past. Because the thing about injuries is not only are they hard to get over, but they change your swing. And golf's a funny game. When you can go out there and say, "Oh, I changed my swing. I've got this groove now. I'm gonna be able to hit it like that." When the chips get down and things get tough, you go back to those old habits a lot of times, and that's really hard to break. So that's going to be the key, is to see if he can do that. If there's anybody in golf that can do it, he's the guy that can do it.
Absolutely. Well, my big topic for bringing it home, I know the past few episodes we've talked about the Olympics because they were going on. Something a lot of people might not know is going on starting actually this weekend is the Paralympic Games down in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, an event that I've always found to be as fascinating as the Olympics, even if it doesn't get as much attention. It is personal for me this year because one of the athletes for Team USA competing down in Rio is an old high school classmate of mine, Blake Haxton. He's a rower who our senior year of high school unfortunately contracted necrotizing fasciitis, the flesh-eating bacteria, had both of his legs amputated, but he was able to come back and he'll be competing as a rower. And I think he'll do very well. I would love to see him up on the medal stand regardless of how he places. But I think the Paralympics certainly merit as much attention, even if we don't necessarily cover them as often as the Olympics.
Yeah, those men and women are unbelievable. Unbelievable, and such an inspiration for folks that's had problems. An inspiration just for normal, normal human beings, just to see the things they accomplish and the desire. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, my favorite thing about the Paralympics is that those guys put so much emphasis on being considered athletes first and foremost. They really put a lot of dedication and time into their craft, and they take it very seriously.
Exactly.
They're very, very talented.
That's exactly right.
It should be fun to watch. It would be nice if the Paralympics got a little more coverage. If they could find some way to cover them more live on NBC, or maybe run some events in juncture with the Olympics, so that people who are already watching the Olympics maybe tune in and see some of these other events as well. Because I think it's something that people, especially people who watch the Olympics, a lot of times do so for the human interest element of it, and doesn't get any more human interest than watching these guys compete.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to wrap up episode 9 of The Changeup. Thanks to Rusty Udy for joining us.
Thank you
Always
for
great
asking.
to
Come back sometime.
have.
Sure thing.
We'll have Rusty. We'll have Dan Stillwell, I'm sure, on in future episodes. Gary Faber, also from the Register-Herald. Always nice to keep that partnership up. And guys, it's finally here. College football season, NFL, high school football. I think we've already seen some great performances. Looking forward to some more throughout the fall.
Yeah, we're going to be stepping on the gas pedal full throttle now.
Yeah, and you can follow us online at SportsWOAY, both on Facebook and Twitter. You can also follow each of us individually on Twitter. I'm at DigbyMatt. Tom is at TomBealWOAY. Rusty, what's your Twitter handle again?
At Rustman1981.
Rustman1981, so you know who to follow. So we will see you next week. Again, thanks for joining us. This has been The Changeup on WOAY Sports.